Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Jesse Poppick joining us live here on today's show from New York City. He's a coach and facilitator and so much more with his sales coaching, his honesty and sexuality coaching. He's here today. Going to blow your mind, the work that he's doing, the people he's helping. And we're going to talk to him more today about all the programs he offers and, of course, get to know him. So first and foremost, welcome to the show. How are you?
I am great, Jill. Really, really happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. And if we want to check out your website, just confirm how we do that.
Well, it's my name, JESSEPOPPICK.com, JessePoppick.com.
All right. Well, excited to have you here. Talk a little bit about the work that you do, if you don't mind. Just give us an overview, because then I want to get to know you first before we kind of dive into things. So tell me what you do as an honesty, sexuality, and sales coach.
Yes, excellent. I appreciate the question so much. So honesty coaching really does permeate both, I imagine, human sexuality and, in my experience, also sales. I imagine that authenticity is something that we get from being honest. And I have been practicing a honesty practice, if you will, called radical honesty for a number of years. And so I pull elements of the practice of radical honesty into my coaching. I was in sales for over 25 years, and I always found that with authenticity, I was able to close a lot more sales. Being honest actually helps being a good salesperson. And then, of course, honesty and sexuality, well, they're intimately connected in more ways than one. And I'm super excited to spend some time speaking about human sexuality and what type of coaching I offer in more detail as we move through the next half an hour or so.
Perfect. Well, first and foremost, we have to get to know you as a person. So tell us, I know you're from New York City. Give us your background. And I know you had an extensive career in sales.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did grow up in New York City in the 70s and 80s, Upper West Side kid. Went to high school in New York City on the Upper East Side. And then moved to California and did my first year of university down in Southern California at Cal State Northridge. Was there for 2 years studying film and TV production. And then I got a bug in me to go up and hug trees. So I moved to Northern California, far, far Northern California.
I love that.
To Humboldt County, and completely switched majors. Started studying ecology, was definitely a tree hugger and a bit of a political and environmental activist at the time. While I was in Northern California, I took a couple trips to Montana and fell in love with Missoula, Montana. And so when I graduated, I moved up to Missoula, lived in Missoula, Montana, in beautiful Western Montana for a few years. Met the woman who would become my first wife. We moved back to New York City together. We had our first child here in New York City, and then got the opportunity to move back to Montana. Had daughter number 2 back in Montana.
Congrats.
And then, it was, and I like that I actually have 3 daughters. 2 of them were born in New York City, and one of them was born in Missoula, Montana. I don't think there could be an opposite city in the world between New York City and Missoula, Montana. Moved back to New York in 2006 and was working at Viacom. I actually worked in digital advertising for many, many years and sold technology, sold services, and eventually in 2019 decided to move away from technology, still keeping my hands in sales, but moving more towards coaching and facilitation. And what I've been doing the last couple of years is actually assisting and facilitating workshops at companies like Google, also in private workshops. And so the facilitation stuff, I can develop my own content. I can also work with other people's content. And then the coaching is more one-on-one and sometimes group coaching as well.
Got it. Amazing. All right. And for today, I know we're going to get down to it. We're talking obviously a little bit about your personal, professional background. It's always good to get to know you. Also, let's go into now your coaching offerings and how this all works.
Right, exactly. So I actually have, if you go to the website, you'll see that there's quite a menu of offerings. I have several one-on-one coaching opportunities that are available. I also offer group coaching opportunities and with a focus on business. Bringing sexual health into businesses is something that an institute that is near and dear to my heart, the Harvey Institute, tries to instill, and actually bringing in healthy sexual awareness to business is not something that businesses should be afraid of. It's something that they ought to embrace, I imagine. And also honesty and in sales. So, I work with companies like Google. I've worked with other technology companies in the past in developing their sales teams, training their sales teams, and learning how to leverage honesty to be more authentic. And from a sales perspective, be able to really build relationships. I mean, people buy from people who they like. And I
Yep.
think many people who buy can sense right away if you're kind of a sharky used car salesman
Hmm.
versus just being open and honest. And the open and honest part,
The more authentic type.
exactly. I think people become much more comfortable in a salesy situation with someone that they think they can trust. And if they believe they can trust you because you're being authentic, then I imagine this leads to more sales for sure. So that's a high level look at the coaching, the honesty, the sexuality coaching, the sales coaching. And what I thought I would love to do with you today, Jill, is actually ask you a little bit about how you see honesty in your life. Like how do you deal with situations where maybe you want to be honest, but you hold yourself back? I'm so curious if there are situations where you want to say something and you decide not to, and why.
I'm the one who always said something, whether it's inappropriate or not. I'm the one with the no
Good.
filter, which could be good and bad, but I always feel it's just that cliche of honesty is the best policy.
It really
And
is.
my kids are 6 and 8, and I try explaining this to them, and it's just I'm very blunt. I'm very honest, but I'm that nice person. If you got a booger in your nose, I'm going to tell you got a booger in your nose. Like I think that's for the better. Okay, you embarrass them. Oh well, causing less embarrassment. I always look at if it comes to me, I would hope that people are honest with me more than
Yeah,
anything because that's what I want. So that's how I'm going to put myself out there. Yeah.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's really a good point. Like I want to be as honest. I want honesty from other people, so I'm going to risk being really honest myself. And I
Mm-hmm.
appreciate you for saying that you don't hold back. And I
Which
think,
gets me in trouble. My sister and I
well,
don't get along because of that.
exactly. And so taking that risk of being honest can lead to sometimes situations where family members or friends decide that maybe you're too honest for them. And that raises questions for me about, well, what scares them about the truth? What do they hold back? What are they holding back, and why? But I appreciate you for suggesting that it is risky. And I think that in my personal experience, I have definitely had family members and friends move away from me due to my open honesty.
So you're the same. So you're totally open
Absolutely,
book.
absolutely.
Okay.
But I also imagine that this has created room for me to bring new people into my life who appreciate the honesty and
Yeah.
actually want to hear the honesty. And the it's still scary to be honest. And I think it's also important for us to be able to tell each other, hey, listen, I have something I want to tell you. And I make myself really nervous. Like I'm really nervous about what it is I'm going to tell you. This is one way to approach being honest, because you're acknowledging that you are yourself scared, and yet you still want to take the risk and be honest with
Mm-hmm.
the other person. Yeah. So let's see. What more can I talk about in terms of the honesty stuff? The practice that I have been following for the last few years is based on the writings of a psychologist or a therapist named Brad Blanton.
No,
Uh,
that's the radical honesty, right? Which I
exactly.
wanted you to bring up too. Okay, good. Yeah, tell me about him and that. Yes.
Yeah. So in my personal journey, I spent many years lying. Many years, about 30 years lying. I lied throughout most of my life and kept a pretty dark secret from everyone in my life. And that dark secret was that I went to go see sex workers on the regular,
Mm-hmm.
and through both my marriages and through most of my adult life. Once that secret came out, I had to work through some pretty serious self-reflection. My second marriage ended due to the honesty that came forth with disclosing this information. And I was drawn to a book that was actually recommended to me by my wife at the time, called Radical Honesty.
Ah.
And after reading the book, I was profoundly moved by the book. It's more of a philosophy than a practice.
So and you chose to.
Well, but then I found out that they have workshops. And in the
Mm-hmm.
workshops, the whole point of the workshops is to learn the practice. How do you actually do this in real life? And this was in 2018. I read the book. 2019 went to my first workshop, and I've been going to workshops pretty regularly since then. And through COVID, I had an extra special opportunity to be on 2 different weekly calls with Radical Honesty coaches for the better part of
Wow.
2 years because
Okay.
of COVID. We couldn't meet in person, and so the coaches were moving everything online. And so weekly we'd get together in a group and practice. And I think that this helped really establish the practice for me, to realize what I'm experiencing, realize the nervousness that comes with being honest, and also noticing when I am feeling something in my body, when I'm noticing something outside in the real world, or what it is that I'm doing up here, which is mostly creating stories about maybe the things out in the real world or things that are happening in my body. And a lot of those stories I believe, and a lot of those stories are just not true.
Hmm.
And being able to separate those experiences and actually begin to notice when it is that I'm making stories versus when it is I'm actually dealing with what someone actually said or what someone actually did.
Got it.
Right. I imagine a lot of story making we do is not based on anything that actually someone said or did, but just stories that we make up in our mind.
Yeah.
So the practice helped me move through a really difficult period of my life. There were other modalities that I was exploring as well. Plant medicine. I did a 12-step. It was a lot of growth during the last few years. And I would say that Radical Honesty has been one of the legs of the stool, so to speak, that's helped prop me up. So I'm pretty happy about the practice, and I'm also happy to spread the word about some of the elements of the practice and how it can be used through coaching, with coaching, and be used on a daily basis, both personally, interpersonal relationships, as well as at work. Right. And I think there is room again for honesty in the workplace, as well as I would hope in personal relationships as well. Yeah.
Hmm. Beautiful. All right. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Let's remind everyone, Jesse, how we can reach out to you.
So you can email me. The email is pretty straightforward. It's YOU
Hmm.
at jessepoppick.com, JESSEPOPPICK.com. And the website also is www.jessepoppick.com, JESSEPOPPICK.com. So I try to make it as
Awesome.
easy as possible to find me.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, do you want to share more details about this honesty coaching or the sexual
Well,
health coaching
I kind of
or?
want to move into the sexuality stuff
Sure.
because I'm
Perfect.
trying to keep track of time here. I know
Yeah.
this week I wanted to kind of hit some high level stuff.
Yeah.
And in the next recording, I'm hoping to actually dive in a little bit more to what the
Perfect.
Harvey Institute has established as the 6 principles of sexual health. So I'm hoping in our next recording, we'll get through the first 3. The following week, we'll do the last 3. And then I want to get into a discussion in a few weeks about honesty coaching, more particularly in more detail, and then obviously sales coaching. But the Harvey Institute is a place that I was introduced to through the work that I do with the Sexual Health Alliance. So I'm getting several certifications through the Sexual Health Alliance. I currently have a certification in problem sexual behaviors, and the 6 principles of sexual health that are promoted by the Harvey Institute are also promoted by the Sexual Health Alliance. And the Harvey Institute really is 2 therapists whose names are Harvey,
Okay.
created this institute, and they developed the 6 principles of sexual
Wow.
health. And the 6 principles are this: consent,
Hmm.
which I think is very topical. There's a lot of discussion about consent these days with the Me Too movement and just consent in general. Non-exploitative. So healthy sexual activities would be non-exploitative. Healthy sexual activities would be honest. So honesty is right in there. Um, Shared values. So if I like to do a certain thing sexually and you don't, we probably aren't on the same page. We're probably not sharing the same values. So maybe a healthy sexual situation between the 2 of us won't work so well. So shared values is important. Protection from disease, sexually transmitted diseases, HIV, and unwanted pregnancies, right? So some sort of protection. If you're seeking to get pregnant, then obviously you wouldn't need that, but protection is another element to the 6 principles. And then the last one is pleasure. And my understanding is when these principles were developed, the first 5 came easy and pleasure wasn't included. And so they added pleasure a bit
Okay.
later in the development of this list. But, seeking pleasure for ourselves individually as well as with partners is something that I think we shy away from having actually open to talk, discussions about.
Yeah.
the political climate in this country doesn't really allow for an open and easy discussion of sexual pleasure. I think
Hmm.
our Puritan society doesn't really want to hear about this stuff. And I find that so ironic. I mean, none of
It's
us
so ironic because they all care about it and talk about it privately. Like, just be open. What do you have to lose? Like,
none
what's
of us would be here. None of us would be here if it wasn't for sex and sexuality. None of us would be
exactly
here.
doesn't
So
make sense. It
it
just
really doesn't.
these straight, rigid, tight. But okay, okay,
Yeah,
to each his
yeah.
own. But go ahead. Maybe one day things are changing. Things have gotten a little better, I'd say.
Well, yes and no. I mean, there's definitely a lot of political there's a lot of politics going on right now in terms of sex education, and people don't realize that there actually sex education is only required in, I think it's about 35 states, and out of that 35, only 28 of them require, it might even be less than 28, require sex ed to be medically accurate,
Oh wow.
which
My kids
surprise.
are 6 and 8. I tell them everything.
Well,
They
and
know
I
about sex, how it happens, what it is. When mom gets her period, they know what a tampon is. Like, I'm just open. Like, it is. You're gonna learn it somewhere. Learn it from me.
Exactly. It's our human bodies. It's these are bodies
Yeah.
that we got to walk around with for our lives. So let's get used to them. Let's be in them. Let's enjoy them. Let's know how to protect them. Let's know how to use them properly. I really appreciate you for saying that. And I was raised also by I think good parents who were not afraid to shy away from having
Hmm.
discussions about sex and sexuality. Of course, I grew up in the '70s when free love was the hip was the
Yeah.
in the moment discussion. But I think I would love to make more of an effort as a sex education advocate to talk more openly about this with children and with adults.
Yeah.
So I look forward to being able to dive in more to each one of these six principles, because I think all of them
Yes.
are really great guideposts in terms of your own personal sexuality. And the way that I lead with my sexuality coaching is to always refer back to these six principles so that one can ask themselves, the sexual situation that I'm putting myself in right now, can I check all these boxes? Are all six of these being met?
Hmm.
Or are there one or two that are missing? And I still might go ahead with that activity, but I'm also recognizing that what I'm doing may not be healthy. Like I can make an unhealthy choice, right? We eat
True.
junk food, we smoke cigarettes, we drink alcohol. So we make lots of unhealthy choices all the time. I think when it comes to sexuality, if we have some guideposts around what healthy sexuality looks like,
Yeah,
it's a lot easier to make a decision about what you're doing.
I agree.
Yeah.
So wait, you offer now it's an 8 week one-on-one or couples. Is that only what you offer? But I was reading the 6 week online course. There's a lot
There's a
to this. I mean,
lot.
we're gonna break it down. I know it's
Absolutely.
get
Yeah, yeah.
specifics.
There's an ongoing menu of stuff, different approaches that I take. I work with couples, and I really like to provide support to couples who are exploring non-traditional relationship types. So monogamy was something that I certainly was spoon-fed from the time I was born until recently. But with the rise of polyamory and the rise of and the embrace of more polyamorous lifestyles and non-monogamous lifestyles becoming slightly more mainstream, moving away from a very monogamous structure can actually be healthy for people. And
Hmm.
and I think that while sexuality was open in the '70s and '80s, '60s, '70s, '80s, there hasn't really been a lot of discussion about relationship styles and relationship types. And I think that perhaps with again a larger discussion about sexuality, we can also bring in a discussion about relationships. And does monogamy work for everyone, and does it have to, or are there other options that can we also morally, and happily and enthusiastically support without ruining the experience for other people? To me, there doesn't have to be one way to do a relationship. I mean, we all get to make choices every day about how we conduct our personal business and how we interact with other people. And so I think the couples who are exploring non-traditional relationship types need additional support, and also need to hear from people who have been there and done that.
Yeah.
I am a non-monogamous person. I imagine I am polyamorous, and I imagine I've actually been this way my whole life. But it took me many, many years to be able to say that and actually embrace that and have that be okay.
Got it. Well, thank
Yeah,
you for sharing. I love that. See, we appreciate honesty here. We still have
indeed.
5 minutes left in the show, so I want to make sure we're covering everything for today. Jesse, where else did you want to go with this?
So you know what? I'll take the 5 minutes just to kind of break down the six principles a bit more. So I'm just going to read from something that I printed out here that refers to each of the six. So going back to consent, right? So sexual health in this case would require that all sexual activities be consensual. And again, I think consent is a
Mm-hmm.
very hot topic right now, for good reason. This principle emphasizes the importance of mutual agreement and respect between all parties involved in any sexual encounter,
Okay.
and informed and enthusiastic consent should be freely given and can also be withdrawn at any time. And I think the enthusiastic part is really important, right? If consent is being coerced in some way, then we're kind of moving into the next principle, which is exploitation, right? So
Mm-hmm.
non-exploitation or non-exploitive sexual health, or something that I think would be a positive supportive sexual health around exploitation, is that open sexuality requires that the sex be non-exploitive.
Okay.
This principle emphasizes the need for sexual activities to be free from any form of exploitation, coercion, or manipulation. So again, that
Okay.
enthusiastic consent piece is kind of an important part of the non-exploitive piece, and to also understand the importance of ethical and respectful conduct in sexual relationships. The third one is honesty, which I'm going to talk about now, but I'm also going to talk about, in our upcoming shows as well. But sexual health requires that we have open and direct communication, both with ourselves and with every and all sexual partners that we have, particularly when it comes to being protected and having discussions about protection before engaging in sexual activities. Honesty in sexual relationship involves clear and transparent communication about desires, boundaries, and expectations. And sometimes we don't know what those are. So I'm also looking forward to talking a little bit more about this on our next show, about like what if we don't know what our boundaries are? What if we don't know what our desires are? What if we haven't explored that?
Mm-hmm.
So that level of honesty requires some additional self-reflection as well.
Beautiful.
Shared values. I love this one because I think this is overlooked. Values serve as a source of identifying one's sexual standards and ethics. This principle acknowledges that individuals have unique values and ethical standards when it comes to their own personal sexual behaviors. It encourages individuals to reflect on and understand their own values and those of their partners. So again, I think this has a root in honesty. And if I'm into BDSM and you're not, then maybe we're not the best couple when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe we can make room for me to explore that and you can do something else. But shared values, I think, is very important. Protection from disease and unwanted pregnancy. Again, this is a hot topic as we edge towards the discussion of babies and pregnancy and abortions and all of that. But protection from disease as well. So this particular principle wants to address the need for anyone who's engaged in sexual activity to implement a contraception plan if they feel so compelled,
Mm-hmm.
that they prevent acquiring a sexually transmitted disease, and they take precautions to prevent the transmission of HIV. And it underscores the importance of sexual health practices that protect against both unintended pregnancies and the spread of sexually transmitted infections. So protection it can work both ways, hopefully. And then this last one is my personal favorite, which is pleasure. Again, I don't want to shy away from the fact that most of us
Mm-hmm.
enjoy sexual activities. Most of us, not everyone. But pleasure is a primary motivation, certainly for masturbation, for solo sexual activity, and the giving of receiving of pleasure between partners, right? So I almost want to lead with pleasure, although I think that it's easy to in discussions about sexuality. The other principles are equally as important. But I think you and I were chatting a bit before. The pleasure principle in this country is something that we shy away from. Our
Ah,
pure,
that's a Janet Jackson song. Remember that song?
indeed, it
Pleasure
is.
Principle.
Uh,
Oh, I
our,
can't
our
sing.
pure our Puritan forefathers laid the groundwork for us to be
So
shy about
funny.
following pleasure. So
All
I think
right.
this is a really great one. It
Perfect.
emphasizes that sexual well-being actually includes enjoying and exploring one's own body and engaging in mutually pleasurable experiences with a partner or partners. So
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. Jesse, we're just about out of time. Would you mind sharing, the ways we can contact you, please?
Absolutely. So you can email me directly at @jessepoppick.com. You can also find more details about all my offerings on my website, which is www.jessepoppick.com.
And social media pages?
So you can find me on Instagram at Jesse Poppick,
Perfect.
JESEPOPPICK.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Pleasure having you here. Looking forward to the next time we connect. Thanks
Indeed,
again,
Jill.
Jesse.
Thank
Have
you
a
so much.
fantastic day. And to all of our listeners and viewers, stay tuned. More of the show is on the way.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.